When we met, I, 41 years old, was a single dad, and my wife, who is 35, was also a single mom. We each had a son who was also the same age. She had a 13-year-old boy from a previous relationship, and I had a 15-year-old son. It felt like a perfect match, and we both agreed that we didn't want any more children. However, 2 years into our marriage, she unexpectedly became pregnant, and now we have a lovely 4-year-old son. Our journey together spanned 7 years of marriage, preceded by slightly over 2 years of being together. Before marrying each other, we shared joint custody with our previous partner, so we had plenty of time to spend together as family. Financially, I have an advantage as I hold a minority share in the logistic business, allowing me to earn significantly more than her as she works as a social worker. Recently, my wife's job led her to work in a predominantly black community. About 7 months ago, looking back, it was around this time that her libido significantly decreased, causing concern in our relationship. Before my wife started working in that community, I had always maintained a relatively high libido, which surpassed hers. However, things drastically changed after she began working there, and I didn't initially suspect anything. Despite this, we made efforts to keep our intimacy alive, aiming for at least once a week, usually on Saturdays. But in reality, it usually ended up being more like 2 or 3 times a month. Our excess life has always remained fairly vanilla in terms of kinks and actual preferences, and I was content with that aspect of our relationship. While I was open to exploring new things, my wife has never expressed any desires when I asked about it. In an attempt to add some excitement to our intimacy, I introduced elements of lingeries and toys into our foreplay. However, it has been over a year since I used them because my wife finds them too much of a hassle, preferring simpler acts like kissing and caressing. After my wife's new assignment caused her ex-life to drop drastically, I never considered seeking satisfaction outside our marriage. One night, however, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed my wife wasn't beside me. Assuming she was attending to our sons or in the bedroom, I was about to drift back to sleep when I heard soft moaning sounds intermittently. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate where the sound was coming from. As I followed the noise, it became evident that my wife was pleasuring herself in our home office. The surprise was twofold. Firstly, because she had locked herself in the office, and secondly, because I had never imagined she would enjoy such activities alone. We have a home office located next to the master's bedroom, while our kids' room is downstairs. I was surprised to find that my wife locked herself in the home office and was pleasuring herself. Given that our home computer is in the office, I assumed she must have been watching something that aroused her. This revelation was unexpected because throughout the time I have known her, I never imagined she would enjoy adult content. Knowing how much I desire intimate affection from her, I found myself torn about how I felt. On one hand, there was part of me that felt excited by her naughtiness, but on the other hand, I felt a bit left out, thinking that she should be sharing such experiences with me instead of doing it alone. As I went back to bed, I couldn't help but hope that this might be a sign of positive things to come. Perhaps she was becoming more sexually open, and ultimately, this might benefit our intimacy. 3 days later, I found myself in the office, checking something on the computer while I was on the phone with a customer. To my surprise, I noticed some adult site suggestions in the address bar. Curiosity got the best of me, and I thought it might be an opportunity to spice up our ex-life by surprising my wife with some kinks she might be into. I had suspected that she didn't want X as often because it didn't satisfy her desires fully. I knew it was her browsing history because she uses Chrome, whereas I use Firefox, but I used the browser that was already opened. Since I was still on the phone, I couldn't investigate further at that moment, but I made a mental note to look into it later. Once the call was done, I opened the browsing history and searched for adult content. As I scrolled through the history, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: shock, insecurity, and confusion. I wasn't sure how to process what I had discovered. I discovered that about 90% of the adult content my wife was watching involved interracial themes, particularly black men having sex with white women. The titles of her searches centered around phrases like huge black cock, F white girl, or black bull, F wives, husband watches, even though we were both white. The revelation left me feeling terrible and inadequate, not because of my size or the fact that the adult content involved infidelity, but because it seemed to be a significant fetish of hers that I could never fulfill. Why we could experiment with toys if she desired something larger. I couldn't change my race to satisfy her fantasy. I started feeling that she might only engage in sex with me out of obligation rather than mutual desire. As it appears, this fetish was the primary focus of her interest. It made me question if she truly desired me at all. Additionally, I couldn't help but wonder if her recent job as a part-time social worker in a predominantly black neighborhood had somehow influenced or played a role in the development of her fetish. These thoughts and emotions have been difficult to process, and it had left me with feelings of inadequate and concern for the intimacy of our relationship. One Saturday night, my wife noticed that I wasn't initiating intimacy, and she tried to make a move. However, I brushed her off, claiming exhaustion. My mind was still consumed with the thoughts and emotions from the recent discovery, and I didn't feel ready to engage in any intimate activities with that mindset. It was hard to shake off those feelings, and I found myself at a loss for how to move forward. As the day passed, I couldn't stop thinking about the situation, but I felt hesitant to talk to her about it. Part of me wanted to pretend it never happened and hope that the issue would fade away over time. This internal struggle left me unsure of what to do next. During this period, I didn't suspect her of cheating. Her routine seemed consistent, coming home from work during the day and only occasionally going out with friends. But otherwise, she stayed home with our kids. Why the thought crossed my mind that something might be happening while I was at work. I couldn't imagine our kids not noticing any unusual behavior. Fast forward a few months later, I chose not to confront my wife about the interracial content, and I had no suspicion of her having an affair. So I decided to let it go, accepting that our ex-life would remain unfulfilling. I started working a lot of overtime to tire myself out and keep the thoughts of intimacy at bay, knowing that she wasn't up for it very often. It was a coping mechanism that helped me deal with the situation to some extent. One day while at work, I was installing GPS tracker for the company's vehicle fleet to improve logistics and ensure timely deliveries. Curiosity struck me, and an idea formed to install the same GPS tracker model to my wife's car as well. The thoughts of monitoring her movement came to mind, although I wasn't sure if it was just a fleeting notion or something I seriously wanted to pursue. After installing the GPS in my wife's car, I discovered that she was frequently visiting a specific location for about 30 minutes to an hour before returning home. My working hours had prevented me from noticing this pattern earlier, but with the help of the GPS, I realized that she had been going to this place almost every day. The location was near her workplace, leading to me to consider that it might be related to her job. Uncertain and not wanting to make baseless accusation, I hesitated to confront her about it, fearing that she could easily explain it away as work-related. Driven by curiosity, I decided to check out the location myself before heading home from work. To my surprise, I arrived at an apartment complex with multiple units. Considering that she could be meeting anyone inside of the unit, I couldn't risk following her without her noticing. That's when I thought of hiring a private investigator to discreetly look into the matter. After deciding to get to the bottom of my wife's mysterious visits, I turned to Craigslist and hired a private investigator, keeping him on retainer. During this period of investigation, I couldn't resist my curiosity and ended up going through her text messages. To my dismay, I discovered conversation that indicated that she had enjoyed her last visit to the location and she expressed a desire to have sex with both individuals involved regularly. At first, some of the messages didn't make sense to me, but later, the pieces fell into place. Unfortunately, some of the text messages had already been deleted, but the timeline revealed that the affair had started after she began working in that specific part of town. I made sure to record her text conversation to have evidence of how the affair had quickly escalated from mere conversation to a physical involvement. The private investigator wasted no time in gathering evidence of my wife entering and leaving an apartment unit, spending hours inside. He managed to capture pictures of two black males, both in their early 20s, coming in and out of the apartment. Initially, we assumed she might be having an affair with one of the men, and the other one was simply his roommate. However, our assumption changed when we realized that both males live in a one-bedroom apartment, and they are always present whenever she visited. The pieces fell into place when we connected the text messages, revealing that she was involved with both of them, engaging in a double-team scenario. This revelation left me feeling incredibly insecure and undesired, and my confidence hit an all-time low. The weight of the situation weighed heavily on me, and I was unsure how to cope with the emotions that now engulfed our relationship. I had the private investigator on retainer for 2 weeks to ensure the accuracy of his findings. Throughout that period, my wife was never seen in public with any of her affair partners, making it evident that their relationship was solely based on sex. The realization that intimacy was the only thing missing in our relationship devastated me, leaving me feeling utterly betrayed and shattered. All along, I had believed that she had a low libido, only to discover that she had been having sex with two men almost every day. Feeling helpless and unsure of how to salvage our marriage, I grappled with the fact that she seemed to have no desire for me and was merely engaging in sex out of sense of marital obligation. The sense of inadequacy and resentment overwhelmed me as I struggled to come to terms with the painful truth. Realizing that my marriage had come to an end, I decided to seek legal counsel to understand my options moving forward. Luckily, we had a prenuptial agreement, which meant that my financial obligation would be limited to child support for our shared child. However, I didn't have the means to officially serve her with the papers until the following week. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to confront her before she could prepare any convincing lies. Anticipating her arrival, I turned on the camera to record the upcoming conversation as evidence. As she entered the house, seemingly oblivious to the situation, I urged her to take a seat because we needed to talk. Her expression revealed shock as I handed her copies of the photos the private investigator had captured. Despite the deer-in-the-headlight look, she complied and asked me what was wrong. With a heavy heart, I responded with a question of my own. "Why don't you tell me?" She played innocent, but it was evident that she knew she had been caught. Despite her attempt to act clueless, she asked me again what was wrong. I confronted her about the pictures, and she quickly came up with an explanation, claiming that it was all part of her job as a social worker to conduct welfare checks on people, which involved visiting their apartment throughout the day. As she tried to justify the pictures, I showed her the text conversation, and her jaw dropped in shock. She had no valid excuse for the messages. Finally, she admitted that one of the men had approached her while she was getting into her car and asked her to go home with him. Although she brushed off the proposition, she still gave him her number, and they began texting. Eventually, he invited her to his apartment, and that's when things escalated. Only when I directly asked her did she admit to having an affair with both men. I asked her the reasons behind her action, and she confessed that she felt good being desired by other men. When I inquired about my desire for her, she admitted it was different. She explained that her relationship with them was purely physical, but she truly loved me and cherished what we had together. I responded, expressing my high libido and the need to be desired by my partner. It hurts to know that she had been visiting them almost every day, denying me intimacy while being actually involved with both of them. Through tears, she promised to change and pleaded with me to give our relationship another chance. In return, I informed her that I had seen her browsing history and knew the kind of men she desired, and I could not fulfill that role. I encouraged her to be true to herself and explore her desire rather than pretending to desire me. We had a long and emotional conversation that evening. She begged me to reconsider and assured me that she would quit her job in that area if it meant saving our relationship. She reminded me that we shared a child together, emphasizing the importance of our family. As much as I wanted to believe her, I knew deep down that our relationship was irreparably damaged. I couldn't see myself with a woman who didn't desire me and had been involved with 2 other men for the past 5 months or even longer. The trust between us had been shattered, and it was clear that moving forward together was not an option. 3 days after our confrontation, we decided to divorce amicably, prioritizing the well-being of our children. It was heartbreaking to know that I wouldn't be seeing her son as frequently as I had grown to love him dearly during our time together. Why I didn't need a DNA test for my son, as he resembled me entirely. I still took an STI test for peace of mind. Unfortunately, it came out clean. Approximately a week after the D-Day, she made the decision to move out and found herself a new apartment. Since then, we have been navigating the divorce process in a remarkably peaceful manner. Fortunately, our kids comprehend that we are parting ways, and our amicable approach makes it easier for them to cope with the situation. We are committed to ensuring their well-being during these challenging times. In my personal journey of healing, I have been proactive in making positive changes, and I have been hitting the gym regularly, adopting a healthier lifestyle by abstaining from drinking and dedicating time to self-improvement through reading and consuming empowering content. This process has helped rebuild my confidence, preparing me to venture back into the dating pool when the time feels right. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. Please support my channel by hitting the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get some reaction on the comment section. Thank you and have a wonderful day.